Hi YouTube, I'm recording this live on stream right now, so we have the Twitch chat running. I just want to show you guys what to do if your resource is not figured out with the Rod of Kapeleke and the Midnight Sun combo. So you might see a lot of builds on a Spiritborn that use those two items in order to get guaranteed crits and get a full resource restore and a big damage buff every time you attack. So the way this is supposed to look is like this. So you can watch my resource right now, and when I attack, I get an empty and a full resource bar every single time. You can also see this here, for example, from the animation of the rake. Rake becomes very large with the Rod of Kapeleke. And if I don't have Rod of Kapeleke, then it's much smaller. So there's also one way of telling it. And a lot of people don't really know what to do when their resources doesn't work like that. So for example, you might be attacking and then you see my resources is not going to fall, and you see that some of my attacks are small, showing me that they are not buffed by the Rod of Kapeleke. So you miss a lot of damage. They're not going to be critical, you don't get the buff from the weapon, and you do like no damage half the time, or even all the time. And how do you fix that? Well, the key here is resource generation, and also the role on your Midnight Sun ring. A lot of people either have a bad ring or neglect that the affix on it is very important, and then roll with like, a double GA ring that has like 35% on the affix, which is absolutely worthless. Like a ring here needs to be, I'd say, at least 40% plus if you want to have any chance. More like 45% plus. Use a non-ancestral if you have to, but make sure you have a good affix on this. And worst case, try it out on a target dummy. But this is not everything. There are also several sources of resource generation that you need to stack. So if you, for example, read my max roll guides, as is actually explained in great detail in some of those guides. Let's take like the quill body here. So we have the mechanics section where we have this combo explained. But the TLDR is if you have a 50% ring, you need 100% extra resource generation in order to hit this. The ring restores 50% of your vigor, and then if you have 100% bonus, that becomes 100%, filling up your entire bar. And here's also a few like data points, for example, about what this looks like if you have less than 50% on your ring. So it is possible with a worse ring, but you should not really be much worse than 50%, or else you have to start investing a lot into resource generation to the point where it's just not worth it, and you rather go and get some more Grimoire kills going. So with that being said, you see here that, for example, right now my resource is not filling. So sometimes it fills up. This sometimes happens mostly because of the sapping paragon node. So this is one here that we have, this one. So every 3 attacks you restore 15% of your vigor. So like this, sometimes it just snaps back to full, and then you get the effect, and the other attacks in between you don't get it. So obviously you want to get it on every single hit, and for this you need to have the exact resource generation combo. So what you will always have in every single build is vigorous. This is one passive here that gives you either 5 to 10 or 15%. So depending on where you are, you might want to put more points or less points into this. So this is something you can try to use early on, even if the guide suggests, for example, only 1 point in this in the endgame setups. That is totally fine. But maybe on the way, if you have a bad ring, you might want to put more points into this. This is like a quick fix and might be just enough to get you there. Another thing you will usually have is the Ravager. So this is this upgrade here, the measured Ravager, that gives you 30%, but you need to have Ravager active for this. So this is not the passive effect of Ravager, and this means that either you have to activate it at the start of the run and then extend the kills with this, and then eventually you stack up like, 1 minute of Ravager and it's enough for the boss fight anyway. But in other cases, your Ravager might fall off during the boss fight, and either you have some way of resetting it, or you have to wait for that time. Usually, at least in my builds, I put a lot of cooldown reduction in some form, either the Jackham's Shell, the Prodigy's Tempo, also Loyalty Helm, for example, is a thing, if you run like a Jaguar combo, for example. So there are various ways of getting permanent Ravager relatively easily, even on the boss fight, but make sure that it's active, because if you rely on this 30% is pretty huge. And then we have resource generation on items here. So for example, in many of my builds, I have a Yen's Blessing. This has resource generation. It's overall a really good item for many Spiritborn builds because of the extra res as well, has movement speed, just kind of everything you want. And the effect is, yeah, whatever. But it has good stats, and this kind of helps you a lot here. So this resource generation roll can be better or worse, it can be greater affixed and so on. So this also influences, for example, how much you need. In most cases, in endgame builds, the Yen's Blessing alone even with 1 point in the passive is actually enough, because you also get a bunch from paragons. So this is also on the sapping board that I have just shown here on this node. We also have these here. There's 8% resource generation, there's 2 and 2 and 2 again. And these are also something you want to pick as you go on this paragon board. So together, this is kind of the key. If you are just leveling up and you're like really low paragon, you haven't reached this board yet, then you might want to invest more on your items. But usually 1 item and these nodes and, you know, not a terrible roll of resource gen is fine. And if that is not enough, you also have like some points you can add here. So this is just what you need to know about this. And as I mentioned, if your Midnight Sun Ring is not good enough, then you have to invest more. So you can also add tempers. For example, here we have the resource generation temper. This is a thing on jewelry. So you can also add this to then make this work. So for example, right now what you see here, I don't have a ravager active, and I can actually make this combo work by just having the Yen's Blessing and the ring together. And now you see I get the effect every single time, and my ravager is not even up. So this is another way of doing it. You can just invest in another roll, for example, and you know the passive, as I mentioned, you can try to min-max it a little bit like this. If you want to figure out what exactly you need, then there's also this Kapeleke calculator here that is Sanctum's creation. So he has made this. I can link this in the description. I didn't make my own for this exactly. Usually I just kind of like try it out or math it out. But you can also use this here, make a copy of this, input your values, and then you will see if you get the full recovery. And the goal is that you get 100% recovery every single time. Because if you don't, basically all hits that are not buffed by Kapeleke are completely worthless. And yeah, just kind of wasted. So this is kind of what you need to know about this. Maximum resource doesn't really matter for that combo directly. So you can get like more resources from having maximum resource. And then, for example, sapping restores more resources, or the spiritual attunement restores more resources. But really, for this combo, resource generation is the only thing that matters, and the ring roll itself. So this is kind of something I wanted to get out there because I keep getting that question 1,000 times a day. So you have various ways of fixing it. In the late game setups, usually the Yen's boots are enough, or 1 temper are enough, unless you want to not run the Ravager upgrade. So in my case, for example, I do not want to run this specifically with the extra 30% regen. And in that case, I just kind of make the build as if I didn't have the Ravager at all. And it is possible, as you can see here. So that is all. Just wanted to get this clarified. Hope this helps you. Wish you good luck with the rest of Season 6, and see you guys next time.